Hi, welcome to the New Property Show. I'm Steve McMenamin.
In this show, Steve, construction coach Elinor talks about people and their potential. And in this week's panel, why did you get into real estate? But first, part two with the Minister for Consumer Affairs, the Honourable Gabrielle Williams.
Investors, because unfortunately, it's the first time in 20 years we've seen a slight decrease in the amount of rental stock, and I think that having some incentives for investors can really play a big part in making sure that rentals don't go up too high, and to make sure that we've got a good balanced market.
Oh, that's right, and look, more rental properties in the market is obviously a desirable thing to meet the demand that we know is reaching us. We also need to make sure that our housing market is more affordable for people coming into that market. When we look at all of those problems, whether it be a lack of housing affordability, particularly for those just wanting to crack into the market, or a lack of rental availability, let alone rent prices, it all kind of leads to the same challenge, which is supply.
Sure.
And that's at the heart of what the government's policy has been about, which is to increase that supply.
Yeah, great. So a part of supply is obviously is building, and you've got to build them, and that's the sort of next area I'd love to touch on. The building industry has gone through a lot of turmoil recently, and we've got a lot of builders going out of business, and still to this day it's happening right around the country. This is certainly not a Victorian thing. So in that you've got obviously the builders don't want to go under, but they're leaving a lot of their clients in the lurch. So I know there's a lot of work being again in your department around there's the building legal service review. You do a lot of work in consumer protection around in this space and dispute resolution. What are you seeing in this sort of space? Where do you think it's heading? Yeah,
look, it has, as you've rightly identified, been a very challenging environment, really, from the Porter Davis collapse and onwards. And you've seen the government have to step into that space through things like the Liquidated Builders Payment Scheme, which has been extended a couple of times as additional cases have come on, to make sure that we're ultimately protecting consumers who have suffered, sometimes quite significant losses as a consequence, as you've outlined.
Sure.
But alongside that is sat a larger piece of work from the government perspective about making sure that we can improve the regulation of that industry and work closely with the industry to do that. So there's been legislation passed earlier in the year that was focused on making sure that insurance was taken out by the builders before money was received from the client, and that's for properties for work that's over $16,000. So again, consumer protection work, but there is a much bigger piece, I think, in here around ensuring that consumers are protected, that insurance is in place, while also listening to the industry about what they need to ensure that they've got the cash flow to complete builds and do that to a really high standard. So that's the challenge that we're working through at the moment, to get those regulatory settings right, to make sure that we're working closely with both consumers and also the real estate and building industry themselves, to talk about what's needed to make our building industry vibrant and viable, because that's really important for us being able to meet our target too of 800,000 new homes over the next decade. So there's, I'd say, watch this space. There's going to be a lot more happening here in the time ahead, and hopefully it represents also significant opportunity in our market.
Absolutely. So to a granular level, I suppose, what advice would you give someone watching today saying, I want to build my dream home? What sort of advice would you be giving someone like that?
Look, select your builder carefully, do your due diligence. I'd say, ensure that they're registered. If you've chosen a builder, ensure that that their insurance policy is sound. You can do that on the VMIA insurance policy checker. There are so many tools available for you to facilitate you being able to do that due diligence, to ensure that you ultimately get what you're paying for, which is the home of your dreams.
Absolutely. Great advice. Thank you. An area close to my heart is financial counselling, and I know that's certainly an area that's received some new investment. love to hear where that's headed and what was the genesis of that.
Yeah, look, financial counselling has over the years played a really important role in being able to support people often in their most challenging of times. And 10 years ago now, we had a Royal Commission into family violence here in Victoria, and it had 227 recommendations. They span pretty much every portfolio in government. They're very, very broad, and in many respects, financial counselling is one of the kind of smaller parts of that overall story,
sure.
But so critical to allowing people to get back on their feet after they've experienced something quite traumatic, allowing the predominantly women affected by family violence to re-establish their lives and have a pathway to security, really,
Sure.
which is what it's all about. So the recent funding in the budget of $6.8 million will go towards being able to provide that counselling specifically for those experiencing family violence. But on top of that, we announced a further $15 million for financial counselling for people experiencing, rental stress, at risk of homelessness, those who, particularly in the current environment of cost of living pressures, we know are doing it really tough at the moment. And if you go to the organisations that run out these programs, these financial counselling programs, and you hear the stories they tell about how the assistance gained through those programs has transformed someone's life,
Sure.
it's
amazing.
it's a powerful
Yeah.
funding stream in that sense, and it can really make the difference between somebody actually having a secure roof over their head and the ability to pay their bills. Versus, the alternative, which in many cases is heart-achingly sad.
Absolutely. No, definitely. It's great work. And just finally, what else is on the radar for Consumer Affairs?
Well, we're in a really challenging environment at the moment. We've got interest rates going up, we've got the cost of living going up, whether that's groceries or energy bills or whatever it is, or fuel or whatever it is we're paying for. Everybody's feeling the pinch at the moment, and I think with that comes a need for us to really make sure that all Victorians understand their rights, that they can know where to access the information that they need, and that we're putting in place the sorts of supports that those who are doing it the hardest will need at this time, and that goes to things like our financial counselling payments. But alongside that, we've also got a really big reform piece on the back of the housing statement, and I think that's going to keep us very busy over the next couple of years, and it really is the centrepiece, I think, of this government. It's a central part of the Allen Labor government's brand to make sure that we're dealing with that pressure of the growth that's heading our way, and making sure that we have the ability to meet that demand, but most importantly working with both the industry and consumers in order to be able to deliver the best possible outcome, which is, we hope, more high quality houses in the market and a market that is affordable.
Great. Well, once again, thank you so much for coming on. I know you're very, very busy, so the time, you've been very generous with your time,
thank you.
and we really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
No, I appreciate it having me on. It's been a great chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Elinor, welcome to the New Property Show. Pleasure to have you.
Likewise, I've only seen your presence online. You were speaking about the power of branding, and yours is an exceptional one, and it continues to grow. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you. It's not about who you know, but who knows you. And in this case, you're well known in the industry. You're known as the construction coach. Now, initially I thought you were coaching clients, but you're coaching mindset, success, branding. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on what you do?
Of course, as Australia's first construction coach, similar to the principle of branding, it's finding a world where you can marry both who you are, the expertise that you want to bring to the industry, and also the impact that you want to create. And having worked on construction sites, I hung up my boots for Louboutins quite some time ago, but I realised that there was a gaping chasm in the development of people within the industry. It's a sensational industry. You've been in property, construction, architecture, they're all so closely intertwined, but so much opportunity was continuously left on the table because people weren't seeing that. And even if they did see any sort of opportunity, they carried so much reservation because the status quo of the industry is so domineering that people are scared to break out of that. And when I saw the opportunity to break out of that, you have to become the person, if you can't see who that is, and lead the way and show people that you can have a completely different career within the industry that is not set in 1965, and for some reason you're still carrying out this archaic narrative which has nothing to do with you but allows you to be in full expression of yourself. So marrying what is traditional construction in terms of the industry and the knowledge, bringing in the self into that conversation and allowing people to have both the industry and the people within as their canvas. Because typical building construction is not for everyone, and there is so much opportunity within the industry. So 4.5 years, 3 books later, podcasts, so on and so forth, it's been a fantastic journey and more happening.
And I think what you talk about there, the word I hear is self. You've become... well, obviously Earl Nightingale, but you become what you think about. So with that said, what you've done is, and I also calculate on the word canvas, you've painted a new picture and you've said to people, this is what you can do, and here I am doing it. You're practicing what you preach and you're inspiring others, because I understand you've got some high profile clients as well that you deal with, and some of these people are going to say, what's a female doing in the industry telling me what I need to know about construction? And one thing that I pick up about you, apart from your style, your speech, is your ability to see through the BS and actually identify that's mindset. That's where the deals are done. So with success being that key undertone for driving the forefront, how do you help people transform?
I want to touch on an interesting word that you said, and that is narrative, and the BS that is embedded into that. You can dissect any common narrative, whether it's gender or you can't buy property for whatever example because the generations before you didn't. If someone truly sat down and dissected common narratives that are falsely being propagated, they'll find that they are all wrong and they only mislead people, not allow them to be expansive or get to greater horizons. And the gender narrative is the first one that I had to put down, because fundamentally it has nothing to do with a person's ability to succeed on their own terms. Because as you correctly pointed out, what you think about is what you actually get to experience in reality. And people in building construction know this really well. They go through the process of planning, of putting in the brief when you want to have a property. They know the process so well. Then you need to finance it, the facade. There's so many aspects that they're so well versed with when it comes to building. But then when they have to apply the same principles of building construction to their life, they have no idea what to do because no one's telling them what to do. And if you look around most of the industry, where are people getting their ideas from? Other mediocre people who are also going nowhere, with all due respect, they can, but they don't carry any vision. So being able to bring that into A, for myself, and then B, bringing that to others and showing them that you already have everything that you need, but if you're not taking a principle-centric approach to your career and your life, you will only go with the flow, and the flow can only go downhill. And that principle-based approach is also the focus of my 4th book.
Leading into the 4th book. How convenient. So, the 4th book, and there's a wealth of knowledge there, but I think what I'm seeing also there too, before we enter into that, is you can't learn how to cook by going to barbecues. You need to be hanging out with the master chefs, the Gordon Ramsays. And essentially, you've separated yourself, you put yourself out on the limb, and so much so that you've written down what you've thought about. The name of the 4th book, if you could, and when is it released?
Secrets of the Construction Industry. And it isn't a book that I have written. I have collated it. I've written my first 3. And I wanted to write my 4th book, and I said I want to speak the truth, because I've realised, especially over the last few years, the industry has taken a huge step away from principles, and reality is built on principles alone. If we're not taking a principle-centric approach, then what is this reality that we're all trying to co-create? And the industry is an absolute mess on every single front, no matter where you look. No one's thriving, no one's really doing well. Statistics are going up, funding's going up, but the same reality is being propagated and the same crappy posters are being put up on the wall, and all of this legislation and whatnot is just sugarcoating on what is fundamentally a flawed reality, because there are no principles that are being spoken about. And not just that, but I don't know in your experience, but there are many sensitive souls in society who, if challenged, I know you challenge people here in a respectful way, and that is so good, because if challenging conversations cannot be brought back in, and for me to assess my own thinking and for you to assess your own thinking, how are we going to evolve? So that was the mission of my fourth book, and I said, look, I can write this alone, but I know I have a big microphone and I want to give that to people who have learnt experience. And that's what wisdom is. Wisdom is embodiment. You have taken the wisdom is within your body. You have actually lived it. And I have taken 32, myself included, exemplary leaders, industry titans, and young guns, because experience matters not. The wisdom has nothing to do with timelines. And ask them a signature question. What is one thing that you would tell a person? So imagine a person has no cells of recognition, no point of reference, and whilst I'm answering, I want you to answer that question as well. Mm-hmm. And I've collated an anthology of a principle-centric approach to the industry, because you have gotten where you are today by principles, as has everyone else on your show.
I have the answer.
What is your answer?
It's very easy.
What is it?
Help others more than you help yourself. If you help others succeed, that's your greatest success. Hence, host of the show, giving people the microphone, but knowing who to choose to give the microphone to. Because not all, even though the words are spoken, doesn't necessarily make them true. So you need to be very careful with who you surround yourself with, A, 2, who's on your team, but most importantly, who are your mentors, who are your supporters, who are your guided souls behind the scenes. So if I was to give that answer correctly, I would really consider who are your top 5 people that have the best 5 values that you want. That's who you need to go to first.
Brilliant answer. And that is so underrated, because those people, you're not just taking on their behaviours, you're taking on their whole belief system. And if that belief system fundamentally doesn't serve where you want to go, they're not your people. It's not just about their worldly success, which is important and it has its place, but when you're aligning, you're actually bringing the whole person into your reality. And as you so aptly pointed out, choosing who that is. And there are exemplary people, there are fantastic people doing great things, instead of the tacticals or the people who are not doing things the not so kosher way, let's put it that way, and they exist. So that's the essence of the fourth book.
Excellent. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to have you back as a guest, and we're going to discuss your real estate business and the difference that you're making there in property. So thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon.
Let's do it.
There's always going to be someone that thinks they can do a little bit better. But I think what I'm noticing about you ladies is that you've also got into the position now, but now you're really sort of growing into it and you're doing a little bit better. Maybe with that question then is, what do you think's missing in real estate? I think it's quite transactional, but how would you take it to another level? So if you wanted to give your customer the ultimate experience, how would you do that? What would be the ultimate gift you give a client? So they've got their success. How do you reward your client for making that purchase? You first, Dawn.
It's a really good question. So how would we reward the client?
Yeah, how do you reward a client? How do you celebrate a deal?
So how we celebrate a deal is often we will make them money going into the deal. So under market value, they've access to a lot of off markets, pre-markets. We then plan out a strategy, a game plan for them to show them where they could be in 10 years, 15 years with this property. So they have the joy of the purchase of now, but they also, to keep them driven, they have their future goal in mind. Contact them again after 3 months once we get a bank reval, and more often than not, they're up 50, 60K. We pull out that equity and we go again for their next deal.
Love it. Excellent. How do you celebrate deals?
So I suppose, traditionally, somebody buys a house, they come into the office and get their keys, and it's quite exciting from that point of view. And of course, there's always the gift that we give, whether it be a hamper or a bottle of champagne. And most importantly, I think sometimes you can go into an office and, they're handed a bunch of keys, because quite often, if it's been in the family for a lot of years, it's that person's then got to go to the home and try and decipher which key's going to open the door. So I think it's really just taking that time, because as agents, quite often as we've made the transaction, it's like, we're on to the next one. So, we're always very big on making sure not only are we there to meet them for the settlement period and gift them with something and have their keys in an orderly fashion that they could literally drive there and open the door themselves. But after that, it's the aftercare. So the celebration continues. It's the aftercare that I put into all of my clients. Like, my words will be, just because the transaction's now finished and we've now settled, I will be your best source of contact here on the peninsula. So if there's anything you need, from a lawnmower to a cleaner, please always call me, because we're here to help you with anything moving forward and make sure that your experience in the area is enjoyable. So I think the biggest thing for me in real estate is that aftercare, because they don't want to feel like they've been dropped like a hot potato.
Excellent. Who's next? You're up, Kylie.
Yeah, I am. In terms of aftercare, it's much the same as a lot of real estate businesses. We want to keep and retain that relationship, especially when there's the entry level. It's really fascinating with being in real estate, because it's not always happy endings. We do deal with a lot of different emotional pathways that people are going through, where there might be separations, it might be deceased estates, marriage breakdowns, all of those things. On one hand, which can be, you need that sensitive approach. It's a very, very different, it's not always very exciting. So it's sort of wearing many hats as to how you can help these people through the process. First home buyers are always a big win. They're always fun to work with, because they're celebrating, it's first time, it's very exciting for them, quite daunting. So often we like to head out to the property with them, meet them, around about the settlement time, and really get them, excited at the front of the house, and to see that emotion on their faces when they are entering their first home and settling in, often coming from perhaps their parents' home or never having owned before. It's a really good experience. So it is a range of emotions that we deal with across the real estate space, but definitely one of the best is first home buyers.
Excellent. And yourself, Michelle?
I really love, if I'm buying a property in my local area, I like to put together a hamper of local produce. I go around Yarra Valleys near where I live, so get together a hamper. I put a coffee voucher for the best coffee shop or something like that, so I give like a bit of a thing back. And I also really like to just, as you said, the aftercare, like follow up and see what I can do. Like there was a young family, and I thought, well, all that space in the backyard, there was like a lot of cubby house and play equipment, and so I just called up with the agent and said, "Oh, hey, would it be okay if they leave that there? Because my client would really appreciate that." And they actually asked, and so it's all that follow up in the long run. They're going to have like a full play space as well as like they're not taking any of that stuff. So it's the aftercare and celebration. I love the local produce, supporting local people in the area, and giving back, and then also helping people ongoing on their journey. You hope they'll one day be a repeated client of yours or refer you to friends as well. So it's
a range of different things. Like we'll do a mix of whether it's flowers, send them for dinner. Some of my clients, my friends, I'm actually off to Adelaide tonight with one of my clients. We're driving through the night on a road trip going to the Barossa Valley. Don't expect to do that with every client, but you do form friendships.
Yes.
And I think
about finding out what they like.
100%. I think you need to individualise it.
Yeah.
We need to remember sometimes their first or second time for an investment. Definitely relate to the keys. It's kind of half the fun trying to work out what opens what, but it's actually frustrating.
It is frustrating.
And it makes sense just to put it together. But I think the most important thing that I'm hearing is that you're with your clients all the way through the transaction. So there's a reason you got into property, and there's a reason you're staying in it. It's definitely not always the money. It's because you work long hours, but it's the passion. So, ladies, I want to thank you for an excellent panel, and we'll see you again on the New Property Show.
Thanks,
Steve.
Thanks for having us.
And that's all for this week. Thank you for joining us. If you want to see the full interviews, check out our website, and we'll see you again next week.